I worked overnight at a warehouse. It had weird rules to follow. Last Saturday evening, I found myself lounging on the couch with my dog, casually flipping through the daily newspaper while the TV hummed in the background. As I browsed the advertisements, one particular ad caught my eye. In search of employees for night shift work. My interest peaked immediately. $28 per hour for a warehouse job was a surprising find. Chuckling to myself, I exclaimed, "Wow, that's a fantastic rate for night work." Energized by the prospect, I jotted down the contact number and set the newspaper aside on the coffee table. Settling back into the comfort of my couch, I surfed through the channels, but nothing much caught my attention. As the night drew on, I reminded myself, it's getting late, time to hit the sack. I turned off the TV and headed towards the bathroom. Midway through brushing my teeth, a peculiar noise from my bedroom made me pause. It must be a tree branch against the window, I reasoned, trying to dismiss the uneasy feeling. After finishing up in the bathroom, I cautiously returned to my bedroom. With the lights off, I tucked into bed, only to awake in a cold sweat the next morning. A fleeting sense of being watched unnerved me momentarily, but I brushed it off, attributing it to an overactive imagination rather than anything supernatural. Rising from bed, I made my way to the kitchen and started preparing bacon and eggs. Glancing at the ad once more, I decided to seize the opportunity. I dialed the number and was greeted warmly by a man named Jack from the warehouse department. "Hi, I noticed your ad for the night shift opening," I began. Jack's response was inviting. "Yes, you can, sir. Just come down to the warehouse later today for an interview. No formal application needed." Reassured, I planned my day around the interview, curious about what this unexpected job opportunity might bring. He said cheerfully, "Oh, okay, I'll be there at 4 p.m. Does that work for you?" I replied with excitement, "Yes, it does." We exchanged goodbyes and I hung up, feeling the thrill of anticipation. At 9:43 a.m., I still had the whole day ahead to prepare and unwind a bit. Settling back on the couch, I turned on the TV and quickly browsed through the channels, finally settling on the History Channel. Most of my afternoon was spent engrossed in documentaries until 3:30 p.m. approached. Considering it was a decently long 20-minute drive to the warehouse, I decided to leave early. I dressed in a neat plaid button-up shirt and khaki pants, grabbed my keys, and stepped out to my car. Taking a deep breath, I turned the ignition and set off. I arrived right on time, spotting the main office sign almost immediately. I parked as close as I could and walked up to the entrance. As I entered, the blast of cool, air-conditioned air was a welcome relief from the stifling Florida heat. The man I had spoken with on the phone greeted me as I walked in. "Hi, Jason. Nice to meet you," he said. I returned the smile and shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, too." He led me into a small office where I took a seat across from his desk. "Let's go over a few things," he began, pulling out a folder filled with papers. His questions seemed odd, inquiring about my proximity to the warehouse, my physical readiness to run, my eyesight, and my ability to memorize rules and procedures. Although some questions seemed irrelevant, I answered them honestly. "All right, you've got the job," he announced after reviewing my responses. "Here are the documents you need to go through to get started. Your first shift is tonight at 12:30 a.m. Pay special attention to the Initially, the documents seemed routine, typical procedures and regulations one might expect for a warehouse job. However, the page titled Rules, which I was told was crucial for my safety, quickly captured my attention. The heading sternly warned, "Follow these rules meticulously to ensure your safety. No matter how trivial or bizarre they may seem, adhere to them." Perplexed, I skimmed the rules and muttered to myself, "What on earth are these ridiculous rules for?" Yet, intrigued, I began to read them more thoroughly. Rule 1. Upon your arrival at the warehouse, you will notice 2 cars start to follow you from the parking lot entrance. Ignore them. Proceed directly to the main office without looking back. If you turn and see figures emerging from the car on your right, immediately lock the office door and call us. Rule 2. The building's lights will be off when you enter. Quickly turn them on and head to the locker room, ensuring that room is also lit. Rule 3. After getting dressed, visit the security office to check camera 9. This situation is rare, but if something appears on the monitor, locate the hammer to the right of the screens and destroy it. Rule 4. At precisely 1:30 a.m., regardless of your task, return to the security office. You'll see an image of a little girl on camera 3. Toggle the monitor off and on 5 times to make it disappear. Rule 5. At 2:30 a.m., a loud banging will echo from a door leading to the main floor. Respond by banging back 3 times. The noise should cease shortly after. Rule 6. While patrolling the basement, never look up. Maintain your gaze downwards. Should you accidentally look up, run immediately. Rule 7. If you encounter a tall man with an unnervingly wide smile, avoid eye contact. He will persist in engaging you. Close your eyes and wait 60 seconds. He will eventually go away. If you look into his eyes, he will take your soul. As I absorbed the bizarre and unnerving rules, a chill ran down my spine. Despite my skepticism about the supernatural, the gravity with which these rules were presented left me uneasy, wondering about the nature of the job I had just accepted. Rule 8. If you hear scratching noises from above, never look up. Rule 9. Should you encounter the little girl from the camera asking for help to find her mother, respond with, "Not right now, sweetie. I'll help you later." After this, she will vanish. Rule 10. At exactly 4:30 a.m., return to the basement. You'll find the environment strangely altered. Ascend the stairs until you reach a shrine. There, light the candles using the provided lighter, clap once, and bow your head for 10 seconds. Rule 11. At 5:30 a.m., make your way to your office and ensure the door is securely locked. Remain there for the rest of your shift until 6:30 a.m. If you hear loud banging on the door and voices coaxing you to open it, ignore them until your shift ends. I scoffed at the paper. Is this some sort of prank? Annoyance flared within me as I considered the possibility of being the new guy's joke target. Dismissing the absurdity of these rules, I set the paper aside and decided to catch some sleep. Awoken by my blaring alarm, I checked the time. 12 a.m. It was time to start the night shift. Hastily, I prepared and left for work, the peculiar tapping at my window from the previous night replaying in my mind. Brushing it off, I hurried to my car. Driving to work, I recalled the unsettling tapping sound, but my thoughts were interrupted as I noticed cars parked on either side of the entrance as I entered the parking lot. Odd for them to be here this late, I mused. As I drove past, their headlights suddenly lit up, and they began following. Peering into my rearview mirror yielded no reflections of them, yet a quick glance over my shoulder confirmed they were still trailing. Going, I muttered, a mix of fear and confusion taking hold. The rules, which I had initially dismissed, now seemed ominously relevant. I pulled up beside the office, and the mysterious cars stopped alongside me. Just a few feet behind my car, frustration surged through me. I was on the verge of confronting the drivers when I suddenly recalled Rule 1, ignore the cars that follow you into the parking lot and proceed straight into the building. This isn't funny anymore, I muttered, my nerves fraying as I stepped out of the car. I had initially dismissed this as a mere prank, but now it seemed to be spiraling out of control. As I approached the cars, the door of one vehicle swung open abruptly, and a large white creature leaped out, paralyzed with shock for a brief moment. I then sprinted towards the main office door, flung it open, and slammed it shut behind me. Instantly, thudding sounds erupted from the other side. What in the world is that? It's definitely not human, I whispered to myself, pressing against the door as it shuddered under the force from outside. In desperation, I turned on the light and dialed the emergency contact listed in the rules. A woman answered, and I blurted out, "There's something trying to kill me." Confusion and fear dominated my thoughts. "Stay calm, sir. You ignored Rule 1, didn't you?" she responded, her tone unexpectedly light. "This is no laughing matter. What is that thing outside?" "It's a tall white creature," I pressed, struggling to keep the door closed. "That would be one of the Watchers. They protect the premises after hours. They don't recognize you, so they think you're an intruder," she explained. She assured me that the Watchers would lose interest soon and retreat to their posts. Despite my protests about the door's integrity, she confidently said, "That door is much sturdier than you think. Just stay calm and give it a few minutes." Reluctantly, I stepped back from the door and the line went dead. The banging ceased shortly after, and I collapsed to the floor, drained and incredulous. "This can't be real. This just can't be happening," I murmured, trying to steady my racing heart. Revisiting the rules, I realized that compliance was non-negotiable after such a harrowing encounter. The identity and purpose of those enigmatic creatures lingered heavily in my mind as I braced myself for the rest of the night. Puzzled by the events of the evening, I pondered whether the lady had been honest about the Watchers. If they truly were a security mechanism, wouldn't they have been informed of my new position here? And what exactly was my role supposed to be amidst these bizarre occurrences? With a heavy sigh, I headed into the locker room, flicked on the light, and dressed for my shift. Clutching the rules, I reviewed them once more to ensure I knew them by heart. As I emerged from the locker room, I glanced through the barred window by the main door. The cars had vanished. It was time to start my shift. I entered the security room and checked camera 9. Seeing nothing unusual, I began my patrol through the warehouse. The quiet, dimly lit aisles felt eerie, reminiscent of a path through a dark, secluded forest. Despite the silence, a nagging sensation tugged at me, suggesting I wasn't alone. As I navigated the second aisle, surrounded by crates and parcels, a sudden noise caught my attention. It sounded like hastening footsteps behind me. Whirling around, my flashlight pierced the darkness, but nothing appeared. Pausing to gather my bearings, I cautiously resumed my patrol. Just as I approached the fourth aisle, my phone jolted me with its ring. The tension was palpable, and the ringtone seemed deafening in the hushed warehouse. I fumbled for the phone, my heart sinking as I saw the caller ID labeled brother. Confusion and fear gripped me. My brother had died from a lung disease 13 years ago. Frantically, I answered, "This isn't funny anymore. Who is this?" No reply came, just heavy, labored breathing that chilled me to the bone. After a tense minute of silence, the call abruptly ended. The sinister atmosphere of the warehouse, coupled with the unexplained phone call and the lurking presence of the watchers, filled me with an overwhelming urge to escape. Yet, the daunting thought of facing whatever guarded the gates compelled me to stay put, trapped within the unnerving confines of the warehouse. Trapped in a situation far beyond the norm, I glanced at my phone, the time glaring back at me. 1:30 a.m. A surge of panic reminded me of Rule 4. I dashed to the security office, locked the door behind me, and flipped to camera 3. My heart raced and my skin crawled as I saw her there. The little girl, around 4 or 5 years old, clutching a battered teddy bear. Her unsettling smile grew wider with each flicker of the camera. After the 5th toggle, she vanished, leaving me to collapse into the chair, gasping for air from the sprint. Regaining my composure, I ventured back to the main floor to resume my rounds, moving swiftly through the first section of the building before heading down to the basement. The air chilled as I descended, a distinct feeling of being watched pressing down on me from above. Recalling Rule 6, I kept my gaze firmly downward, ignoring the whispers in my mind urging me to look up. The basement was a scene from a forgotten era, with its tattered and dusty ambiance, cracked floors and walls, and scattered ancient books and crates. The dim beam of my flashlight barely pierced the pervasive darkness. As I navigated through the gloomy corridor, resisting the constant temptation to raise my eyes, I turned a corner and stopped dead. There, in the dim light, stood the little girl from the camera, her grin unnaturally wide, holding the teddy bear. Now, up close, the toy was grotesquely altered with human eyes and fingernails fashioned into claws. The sight nearly made me sick. "Hey, mister, can you help me find my mommy?" she asked, her voice not that of a child's, but something twisted and malevolent. Overwhelmed by the fear and frustrations of the night, I found the courage to confront the eerie apparition. "Enough!" I shouted at her, my voice echoing through the basement. "This isn't real. You need to go now." My heart pounded, and my hands trembled as I faced the surreal nightmare before me, trying to stand my ground against the horrors of the night. "No, I can't. I'm busy right now, little girl," I managed to say, maintaining as much composure as I could muster. Her response was terrifying. She morphed into a colossal, goat-like creature, her smile widening grotesquely. "You broke the rule," she bellowed, her voice echoing ominously through the basement. In a swift, brutal motion, she lifted me off the ground and hurled me against the wall. The impact was severe. I felt a series of pops in my chest and back, and blood spurted from my mouth as I coughed violently. Pain racked my body as I blacked out. When consciousness slowly crept back, sharp pain stabbed my side and back. Gritting my teeth, I recalled the horrific encounter. I had broken Rule 9, and the creature had retaliated with violence. Struggling to my feet, a wave of dizziness nearly toppled me again. I checked my phone. It was 2:38 a.m. I had been unconscious for nearly an hour. With great effort, I started ascending the stairs, clutching my injured chest and back. As I stepped through the door into the warehouse, a loud banging resonated from across the space. Fumbling for the rule sheet, now bloodied and crumpled, I read, "Rule 5, at 2:30 a.m., respond to any banging by knocking back 3 times to cease the noise." Though every instinct screamed to run, my injuries permitted only a slow, agonizing advance toward the ominous banging. Reaching the source, a massive metal door, the banging intensified, almost desperate. I knocked back 3 times. Not only did it fail to cease, but it also grew fiercer, denting the door with its force. Exhausted and defeated, I slumped against the door, tears welling up as despair took hold. "Why did I even come here?" I sobbed, questioning whether the lure. Clutching my nose to block the fetid odor and gripping the flashlight with my other hand, I staggered through the aisles in agony. Each step was a battle against the pain and the overwhelming stench that permeated the air. Finally, after completing my rounds, I checked the time, 3:26 a.m., and headed towards the last section of the building. As I walked, a disturbing scratching sound echoed from above. Paralyzed with fear, I made the mistake of looking up. Gazing into the darkness, I was met by two ominous, bright red eyes staring down at me. Panic overtook me and I sprinted, momentarily forgetting my injuries as adrenaline surged through my veins. Just as I neared the door, a figure in a red suit and dark dress pants rounded the corner. My eyes instinctively met his, revealing a face so pale and featureless except for a long, pointy tongue where his mouth should have been. The sight sent shivers down my spine. I hesitated briefly, then resumed my frantic escape. Now pursued by not one, but two horrifying entities, I reached the door, slammed it shut, and locked it. The loud bangs that followed were deafening. Desperate to escape, I spotted an exit sign flickering in the dim light. "I've got to get out of here," I whispered to myself, voice ragged with fear and exhaustion. I burst through the door, the night air hitting me like a wave. As I made a break for my car, the two vehicles that had initially followed me lit up and started moving towards me. Reaching into my pocket for my keys, my heart dropped. I had left them back in my locker in the locker room.